Subscribe to After the Sirens and leave a comment as you watch, because this channel exists for those who take history seriously and understand that survival knowledge is never obsolete. This episode is not nostalgia. It is documentation. The introduction explains why food history is survival history. When air raid sirens sounded, when borders closed, when fields burned and trade routes vanished, survival was no longer decided by wealth or ideology. It was decided by calories, shelf life, and knowledge passed quietly between generations. Wars and famines did not spare civilians, and they did not wait for aid. Entire populations survived because they remembered foods the modern world dismissed as primitive, inferior, or forgotten. Understanding these foods is not academic curiosity, it is understanding the mechanics of human endurance. This episode moves immediately into the foods that sustained millions when nothing else remained. Acorn flour became a lifeline when grain vanished. Across Europe and parts of Asia, acorns fed populations during wartime blockades and famine years. During World War I and II, German and Eastern European civilians processed acorns into flour after wheat supplies collapsed. Acorns required no farming, no ownership of land, and no supply chain. The process involved leaching tannins through repeated soaking, drying, and grinding. This knowledge allowed families to produce bread under occupation and starvation conditions. The practical lesson remains clear. Wild carbohydrates that grow without cultivation offer resilience when agriculture fails. Today, learning how to identify, process, and store wild nuts can supplement emergency food planning in ways no modern ration replaces. Black bread carried working populations through sieges and rationing. Black bread, made from rye, barley, or mixed grains, dominated wartime diets across Europe because it required less refined milling and grew in poor soil. During the siege of Leningrad, bread included cellulose fillers, sawdust, and ground husks, yet it still delivered survival calories. Black bread spoiled slowly and provided dense energy under extreme cold. Modern application is straightforward. Dense, low-refinement carbohydrates store longer, resist spoilage, and deliver more survival value than processed white flour products. Understanding how to bake, store, and ration such bread builds practical resilience. Dried legumes became silent protein reserves. Beans, lentils, and peas fed soldiers and civilians alike during prolonged conflicts. They dried easily, stored for years, and could be cooked with minimal fuel. During wartime shortages in China, Eastern Europe, and Africa, legumes replaced meat almost entirely. Their protein content prevented muscle wasting and supported labor capacity. Today, long-term food storage still depends on this principle. Protein that requires no refrigeration and minimal preparation remains foundational to survival planning. Fermented foods preserved nutrition when refrigeration did not exist. Sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented cassava, and sour milk products prevented vitamin deficiencies during extended shortages. During long winters and sieges, fermentation preserved vegetables and protected gut health when fresh food vanished. In World War II, fermented cabbage reduced scurvy risk in rationed populations. The modern lesson is not trend-driven fermentation culture. It is nutrient preservation without electricity. Knowing how to ferment vegetables remains one of the most reliable survival skills available. Roots and tubers replaced grain when fields were destroyed. Potatoes, yams, cassava, and turnips sustained populations because they grew underground and survived bombardment. In occupied territories, root crops often became the last reliable food source. Their calorie density and resilience made them ideal famine staples. For modern preparedness, Root crops demonstrate the value of hidden food systems. Home gardens, even small ones, benefit from crops that survive surface disruption. Famine grasses and wild greens filled the final gaps. In extreme conditions, populations turned to nettles, dandelion greens, and wild grasses. During the Irish famine and wartime Europe, these plants provided vitamins that delayed starvation. Knowledge of edible wild plants saved lives quietly without documentation. Today, ethical foraging knowledge remains one of the most underappreciated survival disciplines. What these foods teach us about survival today? These foods share three traits. They grow without reliance on centralized systems. They store without technology. They require knowledge rather than wealth. Applying these lessons today means learning preservation methods, identifying resilient crops, and understanding calories as survival currency. History does not repeat politely. It tests preparedness brutally. If this documentary added depth to your understanding of survival history, subscribe to After the Sirens, share this episode with someone who values real historical knowledge, and leave a comment with the food you believe modern society has forgotten most.